and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly, and I am your host, and I have forsaken the Bushido code to get really wasted and gamble all my money away.
And I'm Matt Freeman, a masterless Ronin of unsurpassed swordsmanship.
Well, I guess you went with the positive portrayal of yourself, and I went with the negative.
I'm not going to miss this opportunity to be a Ronin.
This week on the show, it's another one of our patron-produced episodes. We haven't done this in a while, Matt.
Yeah.
Folks that pledge to us on the Supreme Leader Doof level or higher on our Patreon account, that's patreon.com/doofmedia, get to select a movie for us to do an episode of this show on. And this week, Patron Strifey asked us to take a look at the 2010 Takashi Miike film, 13 Assassins. It's a movie I don't think either of us had seen before.
Yeah, I certainly had not.
So we're going to talk all about 13 Assassins. It will be a full spoilers review for that movie, which you should watch if you haven't seen right now. Go watch it and then check back with us. It's available on Hulu, I think. I'm not sure. I think that's where I watched it, on Hulu.
Yeah, I think that is correct.
Then we're going to chat about the 2020 Best Picture winning Nomadland briefly at the end of the show. I also just want to chat with you, Matt, about the Oscars a little bit, because that was a thing that happened last week.
Oh, was it?
And I've got things to say about it.
Well, that sounds just delightful.
And then I thought we'd wrap everything up with a brief talk about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the show that completed last week. I've got some opinions on that too, Matt, and I'm sure you do as well.
Yes, I do. I didn't see the last episode, but from what I hear, I don't need to.
All right, let's move right into our feature review. And let's talk all about 13 Assassins.
明石藩主松平成次様お命頂戴いたすことと相なった命を捨て大事をなす時が来た明石が動きました明石の人数ははるかに多い200は超えておりましょう13人
Matt, what is 13 Assassins about?
A group of assassins come together for a suicide mission to kill an evil lord.
Short, sweet, and to the point.
Just like the movie.
Yes. It's actually not that short.
That's true.
But there are lots of points.
Lots of points. And it is sweet because revenge is a dish best served cold.
This is a film written by Daisuke Tengan with story credits from Shiochiru Ikimiya, and of course directed by Takashi Miike, a director that we've talked about on this podcast before, Matt. I don't even know if you remember that. It was a long, long time ago. He directed a film called Audition that we talked about on a Kryptonian collection a million years ago.
Yeah, I forgot that was him, but I did love that movie. I believe that we allowed that movie into the Kryptonian collection.
We did. Takashi Miike is a director, Matt, that we could never do a Deconstructing Director series on, because he has directed over 100 movies over the course of his career.
That's ridiculous.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And he directs movies across the gamut. You know, like he did a horror film like Audition. He does a lot of samurai pictures like 13 Assassins. And he also does like modern gangster films. I mean, I think one of his most recent films that I saw a few years ago was a movie called First Love that came out in 2019, and I loved it. It's like this boxer who falls in love with this girl and is in this big drug thing, and it's hilarious and violent and wonderful. It's such a good movie. So he's a really fun director. I would love to talk about more of his movies, but we can't do a director series because there's just too damn many of them.
Too many. And it's funny because Audition feels like a very modern movie, even though it was actually made in 1999. Mm-hmm. Whereas this movie felt very much like a throwback. Like I'm just being completely honest. When I started this movie, I watched it for a little bit and then I like paused it and looked up on my phone, like, is this the right version? And it was just because like it's made in a style that really made me feel like I was watching an older movie. Now like it's extremely well made. It's not like I was thinking like this is bad. It's like I was thinking like this doesn't feel like a movie made in 2010.
No. I mean, this is a remake of a 1963 film of the same name, 13 Assassins,
Mm-hmm.
but he is also going for a very old school kind of Japanese samurai film. I mean, this movie is heavily borrowing feel and imagery from the absolutely famous and wonderful film Seven Samurai, which one of these days we're going to have to watch that movie and talk about it, Matt, because it's wild to me that you and I have been doing a movie podcast for 4 years and we haven't talked about a Kurosawa film yet. That seems broken.
Yeah, that's not right.
But I mean, it's kind of a love letter to a lot of those films in many ways. And I really, really enjoyed it. So what did you think overall about 13 Assassins?
I mean, it's sort of perfect at what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a great, group of warriors comes together to correct some injustice in the world. In this particular case, we spend, I guess you could call it the first act, making sure that we really hate this bad guy, this evil lord.
Yes, we do.
Really effectively, some really screwed up stuff in there. Very upsetting, actually. Kind of had to stop the movie and make sure that my kids were soundly asleep and that they weren't going to somehow see the horrible stuff that was happening on the screen. And then we move into the collecting, the recruits, which is its own part of the movie, which works perfectly. Like you get to know them, you get to like them, you get to better understand Shinzamon. And then I'm not going to go through the whole thing right now, but yeah, I mean, it basically follows all of the sort of conventional expected plot beats of a story of this nature, which is what you want it to do. And it executes on it well, and you care about everyone and you want them to succeed. And I think probably the most impressive thing to me was that the last half of this movie, the last hour of this movie is just a big sword fight.
Yeah.
And it did not become boring. It remained interesting. As the ebb and flow of the battle, the things are going well, things are going poorly. You care about each of the characters. Each character gets kind of their own moment. The flow of what's happening and where it's happening is well portrayed, even though it's a very chaotic situation. So just basically incredibly high difficulty level, sort of basic premise, and yet executed so well that it just makes you have a great time the whole way through. Yeah,
I mean, you're absolutely right that there's a lot of chances for that final battle to get dull and stale, and it never does. I think it's remarkable. There's another film that Miike directed a few years ago that I saw at Fantastic Fest called Blade of the Immortal, and it was a film that everyone that I watched the movie with loved, and I hated. It's one of my least favorite Miike films ever, and it's just it's 2.5 hours of basically near constant action. Except the main character is immortal. It's in the title. He's immortal. And so it's just it just bored the shit out of me. And I was worried going into this movie. I was like, oh, another Miike samurai film. I hope it doesn't fall into the same trap. And I was so happy that it didn't. It was just the way, once we get into the action, the way it escalates and changes and we go from different set piece within the overall set piece. It's just very well choreographed. It's very well paced. I think you're totally right that we feel the ebb and flow. I think I was watching it with my wife and she was basically like, all these guys are going to die, right? And I was like, yeah, totally. They're all going to die. And 10, 15 minutes into the battle, none of them had died yet. And I was like, well, this is going really well. It's going really well for everyone. And then the first one died. I was like, oh, here we go. Here we go. It's going to turn bad now. And it did. And it did. I think you're right that the fact that the movie takes so long to establish who these people are, and we don't get to know all 13 of the characters, right? If there was one complaint I had about the film, it's that some of these guys get a little bit of a short shrift. We just really get introduced to them and they don't have any personality.
Yeah. It's funny. I was about to say, minor complaint, the first two guys who died, I was like, wait, who are they?
Yeah.
And then I realized, I guess they were the people who came along.
They were one of the group of 5 that joined them. Right. And those got the least amount of characterization. They were just there's 5 of us. Here we go. Right.
I feel like the movie, I mean, I get there's an older story that they're homaging or remaking or whatever, but I feel like it could have been 6 assassins.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I don't know. Obviously, I wonder if the number 13 is significant in any way to this original story. I mean, I know there's like, this is loosely based on a true story, very loosely. I think just this guy got assassinated and they built a story around it of these wonderful Ronin that like were upholding the honor of the samurai way. I don't know how much of that's true. So maybe, I mean, you're right. I think in effect, there's really like 7 of them at most that have character and like we understand what their motivation is and why they're here. And look, that's enough. Like I'm not actually saying I needed all 13 of them. I think it would have really dragged down the movie if you like take time for each and every one of these people to have a backstory and a reason for being here. And that's just too much for a 2-hour movie. But it was definitely like, the first ones that died are ones that I had no emotional attachment to at all. And I'm just like, oh, that's sad. That's
but
a bummer.
They did a good job. I see this as being kind of a trick for a story like this is if I say the bandit, the swords master, the nephew, the leader, you know who I'm referring to, even if I don't have their names, right?
Oh yeah.
In fact, I think neither of us remembers anyone's name, but but it's very easy to keep track of them by their role, and the story doesn't waste much time establishing them in these archetypes. But
no, they live in the archetype. And I mean, that's the thing about a movie like this. It's operating in very broad archetypes. Like even on the other side, you have the absolutely despicable antagonist who, you're right, like the movie doesn't hold back. It doesn't want you to be conflicted about how terrible of a person this is at all. The conflict is really between the leader, our main character, and his old friend who is still serving the Lord on the other side.
Yeah.
And that's the real conflict of the movie is this wonderful idea. There's a lot going on in this movie, Matt. This is a movie in which we're still under the shogun system. They're still under a feudal system, and it's peacetime. And so these are warriors. These are warriors that have committed their entire life to being a warrior. And now there's no more fights to fight. And so these people are searching for what is life? What is meaning in that? I mean, our main character opens, he's just fishing. That's what he does now. He just fishes.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of characters like searching for what does it mean to be a warrior in a world of peace.
Yeah, right. I love stories like this, honestly. Like I've read a lot of these types of stories. Most recently, I read Musashi, which is an epic Japanese, samurai novel.
Yeah, I need to read that.
About a sort of probably largely fictionalized version of Miyamoto Musashi, which was published in the 1930s, actually. Which is interesting because this movie is basically about the like 1850s, right? So like, it's just interesting how like there's a line in this movie where one of the characters is like, yeah, screw all this samurai stuff. I'm running away to America. And I was kind of startled. I was like, America. And then I was like, oh, like there are like a couple of guns in this movie. So yeah. they would know about America. It's just a funny thing to see.
I mean, it's interesting because this movie kind of sits at the very end of an era. I mean, this is, I think it even says in the closing credits, like the feudal system in Japan collapsed not long after the date that this movie took place.
Yeah.
And then like things were reorganized, and then suddenly the late 1800s see Japan like sprinting into the modern era.
Yeah.
In some very violent ways they did that. But it is really like this interesting kind of snapshot of kind of the end of a certain way of life.
Yeah. Right. And I think that's one thing that I see very, very admittedly as a outside observer.
Sure.
I see a lot of Japanese media sort of examining this idea of samurai and duty and bushido. And that's very central to this movie, where we have, as you said, the real sort of functional protagonist and antagonist are our leader and his rival. And their conflict is basically the rival believes that samurai, the nature of a samurai is to be defined by your duty. You are in service to your lord, and even if your lord is literally the worst guy in the world, it is your duty as a samurai. It is your role. It is the purpose of your existence to obey your lord. It's like a religious directive, basically.
Yeah.
And our protagonist is more of the idea where it's like his version of Bushido seems to have more to do with like justice and service, and they don't go into it, like it's not heavy handed. He doesn't really get like a long speech where he talks about like actually the samurai should serve the people because of democracy. Like, no, like that's we're not doing that in this movie. But I think it's clear enough for what it's doing as a film that like it's this, you know, sort of a battle for the soul of what it means to be a samurai, or maybe even for what it means to follow like the warrior code in general. Yeah,
and I mean, our Shinzaemon is the name of our protagonist. I only remember that because I have it here, and because I'm an uncultured American boy who cannot remember Japanese names to save his life. But he is motivated by that, and mostly, I mean, like the way he's kind of conscripted into this whole thing is that the poor woman, the armless, legless woman, who is just absolutely tortured by this guy. And it's interesting because like the person that recruits him, which is the senior advisor of the shogunate council, I think Doi is his name. He is both disgusted by the actions of this lord, like, but I feel like his reasoning is so much more strategic in that, like, he sees it as less we need to stand up for the people and more we need to maintain our way of life. And if a person like this is allowed to exist and go unpunished, then this whole system will collapse. And I thought that was really interesting because I don't think he's in it for like democracy or for protection of the people.
Yeah, there was a lot of really interesting stuff toward the beginning of the movie where there was like a whole scene where I think it was the guy you're talking about. I regret that I don't really remember the name of the character, but he refuses to actually say, "Hey, Shinzaemon, I need you to assassinate this guy."
Yeah.
He's just like, "Oh, it's so unfortunate that this situation has arisen. Oh, it's really too bad that my honor prevents me from doing anything about this. Oh man, this really sucks, Shinzaemon. If only someone would do something about this situation.
Yeah.
I would commit harikiri over this. I really would."
Yeah. Yeah. And here, let me introduce to you a father whose son was murdered by this guy, and then introduce you a woman who was horribly tortured by this man.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a bit like, I think that's intentional. I'm like 90% sure that it's intentionally saying like the system as it's set up is incapable of dealing with the fact that this monster has been put in power, because there's this like interlocking web of like honor and duty obligations. Like the first thing we see in the movie is a guy committing harikiri to sort of protest what's happening, and like according to his sort of value system, that's all he's really able to do.
Yeah,
which is still like it's a huge sacrifice. It's a hugely meaningful thing to do. But
it represents a fundamentally broken system. If that's the only course of action, someone who is not of little, like that person, I think, was a leader of one of the tribes of Japan, I believe.
I think you're right.
So he's a very powerful individual in the system, but he is still powerless to do anything but make a ritualistic, bring attention to how displeased I am sacrifice. Like, it just, I do think a lot of what this movie is saying is the system is fundamentally broken, and it takes people like Shinzaemon to do an absurdly ridiculous, near impossible thing just to take a murderous monster out of the seat of power.
Yeah, right. And even, I'm not going to say Shinzaemon is like the bad guy, far from it, but it is interesting that like even his rationale or sort of motivation, yeah, he kind of wants to see justice done, but also like his first reaction is basically like, oh, I was so afraid that I was going to die an old man in my bed.
Yeah.
But this way I get an opportunity to die in battle. And like, he's like, oh, my hands are shaking. Like I'm so excited about this. And
yeah. I mean, it's really fascinating, right? Because
yeah,
absolutely, he's so excited for this opportunity. He's a warrior. He's a person that committed to this life, and he doesn't have an opportunity to do it. And look, here's an opportunity. And that's all these people that join him. The same thing. Oh, here's an opportunity. Here's meaning. It's a time of peace. I mean, that's kind of the way he recruits his nephew is, oh, you've committed your life to womanizing and gambling, and that's all you do now. And you've lost the Bushido way of life. Come with me on the suicide mission to regain your honor. And it's like the only way to do that is through killing and murder. And yeah, I mean, it's complicated. And I think like, I love the end of the movie has Naritsugu, the bad guy, be like, this is awesome. We need to bring back wartime. This is like, this is what life should be. I love it. Yeah. And I think that does have an effect on Shinzaemon. I mean, I think that's kind of why he allows himself to be killed at the end there, because he realizes that like, there's nothing for a person, a warrior in this time anymore, that he has to remove himself from it.
Yeah. I agree. I'm glad you brought that moment up where where you know, you're like, that's the moment where you're like, oh my God, like they really need to kill this guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that being, because he obviously does let himself be killed.
Yeah.
Just as well as if he had killed himself, and that's, you know, that's him deciding, that's him choosing and saying like, this was always a suicide mission. I never planned to survive this. This was my choice of how I wanted to exit the world, was in this violent way. Which again, he did something good for the world in sacrifice, but like it was out of this ethos that like the only way to live a meaningful life is to be a warrior and to, you know, to kill 200 people with arrows and explosives, and swords.
Yeah, and I mean that is the interesting thing. Like, it's a fun movie. I love the action.
Yeah,
the bad guy is despicable, but his 200, those are just dudes. I mean, they're just men that like are part of the army of this clan, and they're just protecting their guy. Like it's fun, but it's horribly violent. And like, I think you're supposed to feel conflicted about these things. I mean, the moment at the end that really spoke to me is the two of our 13, only 2 people survive this thing. And the one that survives is Shinzaemon's nephew, and then the wonderful bandit that they find in a cage up in the forest, who inexplicably survives.
Yeah.
He should have been dead. Like, they just kind of make him magic. And I kind of love it. Like,
right. I sort of did see that as like, just like, oh, this is just basically a magical, he like not like a spirit or something. Like we're just admitting that because he's, oh yeah, this is no worse than the wounds you get wrestling a bear. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely like supernatural in some way, because he gets stabbed through the neck, and then the next scene he is not stabbed through the neck. So I wonder what, like, we can kind of maybe ruminate what they're trying to say about him, because he is the only one that is not a samurai. He's just like some guy. And so if you want to like really play with it, you could be like, oh, this is one of the gods like trying to understand what it means to be a samurai. And his conclusion is, this is fucked. Like, this is fucked. Like, it doesn't matter if you're on the right side of this thing, that they were removing a despicable human being. This whole system is fucked up and terrible. I'm out of here. I'm gone.
Yeah. The whole ending really is this rejection, right? This rejection of all of that stuff. Because, you know, Shinzaemon is saying to the evil lord, like, your mistake was thinking that you were actually important when you were actually just a decorative and ceremonial position that, you know, it took us a lot of effort, but we got rid of you, basically. Yeah. Well,
and I think that's where one thing about the ending that I kind of want to talk to you about, because I'm not sure if I'm reading this right, but it looked like his nephew, like his dying kind of wish to his nephew is kind of find something, you know, like find purpose in your life.
Right.
And it looks like in a moment that he is about to throw away his samurai sword.
Yeah.
Like it looks like he's about to throw the katana away and say like, okay, I'm done with this way of life. But he doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
He's at the last minute, it seems like he holds on to the sword and then sheathes it and then walks on, kind of indicating that no, he's going to stick with this thing. And I don't know how to feel about that moment in the movie. I don't know if I feel like triumphant about that, as like, he's not going to go back to being the gambling womanizer, or if it's just like, oh, he's just stuck in this system that's going to perpetuate itself.
To me, it felt like kind of a moment, kind of like the latter interpretation, that he was unable to move on from this, which it is an interestingly ambiguous ending moment, because he sort of smiles to himself also.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that maybe his uncle wanted him to pick something different.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of him maybe wants to, because like you can kind of see like his reaction to all this stuff has been, sorrow.
Yeah.
And like he's watched all of his samurai brothers die for this noble cause, and like he's not really happy. He's not happy that they won. He's not happy that he lived. He's not happy his uncle's dead. Like this wasn't fulfilling to him, I don't think, and yet he still can't throw the sword away.
Yeah, he can't escape it. Yeah. That was my take as well. I just wasn't totally sure. Like I actually stopped the movie and rewound it just to make sure, is he gesturing to throw away the sword, or was he cleaning the blood off of it? Like what was he doing? And I think it really does look like he's about to toss it.
Yeah,
so.
I totally, that was my interpretation, that he like goes to throw it and then like can't do it and looks rueful.
Yeah.
So.
What a bummer. Yeah.
I mean, really, it's funny because we just talked, we kind of started out talking about how it's sort of almost by the numbers, but like there's a lot of depth. There's a lot of thematic depth. There's a lot of character depth behind this fairly simple premise.
This is what keeps the action engaging, is that there is this depth behind it, that these characters are wrestling with certain things and they're uncertain, like, and you want to see them win, but you also know they're going to die, and you can see the tragedy behind it, and it just allows the action to be engaging throughout. It does help that Miike like shoots the shit out of this movie. Like I love the way he shot the different action scenes. There's when we get to the kind of Ronin master and his apprentice and their death scene, he like goes away from these wide, like glorious shots to this like very close and intimate, like handheld shots. And then at one point he's just going like a point of view shot from the view of someone who's lying down dying. And like even the camera is like turned sideways, right?
Yeah.
As if we're looking through a guy's eyes who's lying on his side, like watching his master get brutally murdered.
Right.
And it's horrifying. And it's just like in the middle of this, what up until this point, even after we've lost a couple people, was still like this epic, like badass fight sequence. And he kind of just breaks it and says, no, we're going to zoom in and you're going to be disturbed by this.
Right. Well, that I agree. Yeah, you're hitting all of these points that I thought were really important, because I believe that is the character who earlier in the movie says something like, I'm gonna butcher it, but it's like, if you lose your sword, use a stick. If you lose your stick, use a rock, or something, something like that. And and as that sword master is, losing finally after killing a million guys, and doing it in sort of an awesome like Kill Bill type of way, where it's isn't this awesome? Like it kind of goes down to the level of just like blood everywhere, and he's like bashing people's heads in with a rock because he's lost his sword.
Yeah.
And it's brutal, and it's visceral, and it's not at all the like picture of chivalrous, dueling between these two cultured warriors. It's just this guy who's just really good at killing people, just killing people, and then getting gradually more and more wounded until he can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
While his apprentice like watches on and helplessly reaches out his hand for him.
Yeah. God, it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
Just every, like, you could tell he's just a master of really getting the emotions that he wants out of you in those moments.
Yeah.
Just like the perfect place to put the camera. I want to talk about this whole genre of movie though,
Sure.
which is the like the kind of like the Thermopylae, kind of like the Saving Private Ryan, like small group of people finds themselves in a place, like booby traps the place to allow the odds to even up, and then heroically sacrifices themselves for the victory. It's pretty fascinating. I love this shit. I love these type of movies. I love them to death. But I think I was thinking about this week, and this is a thing that is like cross time, cross cultural. It's a thing human beings are obsessed with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Alamo, the Thermopylae, like we just love these last stand, completely outnumbered.
Yeah,
like we love these stories.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and I like human beings love stories like this.
The battles of Caesar, the battles of Alexander the Great,
exactly.
That's why people call him Alexander the Great. Is he's like, yeah, he was really good at killing people. Oh, okay, neat.
Mm-hmm. It's just really like you can't, like, this is not a Western cultural obsession, an Eastern cultural obsession. It seems to be like a universal human trait that we love this idea of these heroically sacrificial, heavily outnumbered fights.
Mm-hmm.
We love talking about them. We love talking about them. We love learning about them. We love recreating them. We just love it. We love it.
Yeah, there's something about the battle against impossible odds.
Mm-hmm.
Is just deeply resonant. Yeah, I mean, it is a plot that happens again and again. It's like even Gladiator. It's down to just like, well, it's this one guy.
Yeah.
But it's still very much the same feeling where it's like him against the world. I mean, you could even say something like John Wick is one guy against the world, right? It's distinct from what you're talking about. It's not the same genre, but I think it's evoking the same emotions.
Sure. And I mean, like, not to get too broad, but like, it just surprises me that this is something, like, you could argue that makes sense in a more individualistic, like, Western type culture, but I think it's just ubiquitous for humans. Like, we just love this idea, this central idea, the Alamo. We love that shit. Human beings love. There's Alamos everywhere. This is just another Alamo.
Yeah, I think it's just like the idea of like heroically sacrificing yourself, or being willing to sacrifice yourself for the group is deeply wired into us as like as like a value of, like, I don't know. I don't usually go into like evolutionary psychology land on Doofcast, but like you can totally see how, you can totally see like why we would come to value someone's demonstrated willingness to risk their lives for our sakes. Like, okay, that person is awesome forever now.
Yeah, that is definitely a positive evolutionary trait for the group as a whole. Yeah, that's for sure.
Right.
It's just fascinating. I mean, I'm speaking about myself basically here, because I love all this shit so much. Like, I love the Greek story of the pass. Like, even though I don't like Zack Snyder, I love his visual adaptation of that. Like, I love the Alamo story. I loved stories like this, the Saving Private Ryan fight at the end. Like, it's all part of it. Like, Seven Samurai is a very similar thing as well. This idea of, like, we're gonna hold this ground, and we're not letting these people pass us. It's gonna take every single one of us, and we're gonna do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also like a pretty common like fantasy scenario of I was gonna say young people, but I think I'll just say people that like you're gonna be the one who has to defend the people you care about against bad guys.
Yeah,
and like there's something super alluring about that. I think just like generally cross culturally, very very broadly speaking. And certainly when I was younger and like did martial arts and stuff, it's like always in the back of your mind, you're asking yourself, like, is this situation going to turn south and I'm going to have to defend everyone with my martial arts skills?
I will stand here alone and
Yeah.
the forces of evil
It's gonna
attacking me, and I will hold them all back. Yeah,
right.
definitely. Like when
Yeah.
I played as a kid, that was definitely part of my fantasies for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
So,
just it's
yeah.
interesting.
It's interesting, and this movie executes on it well. I think,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, I think I'm kind of repeating myself now, but like it's got some textual ambiguity underlying that, where you're like, I'm not really sure what was solved here. like they killed the one really bad guy, but also it's been made clear to us that this whole system is kind of awful,
Yeah.
because this is the system that, you know, sort of created this guy in the first place. Actually, I mean, you could almost say that the horrible bastard murderer lord is like a sort of natural product of this system.
Yeah.
um like he's he's an anomaly in the sense that he sucks real bad, but he's not an anomaly, and it's like, okay, but the system seems to be set up to empower this kind of person.
Yeah, a system that allows a person like that to operate, where the only way to stop him is basically to go outside of the rule of law, basically.
Yeah, right.
Is fundamentally fucked up and broken, and all they're doing is giving their lives to maintain the status quo, basically. Like
exactly.
He represents a change, and they're removing him.
Exactly.
And it's not like it's a good change. Like, I'm not saying that, like, no, they should have let this guy exist, but yeah, it's like, this isn't a revolutionary fight, right? You know,
No.
they're not sacrificing their lives to win freedom for the people.
Right.
They're just stopping one monster who is wreaking terrible violence. And it is really not until very late in the movie to where we kind of define the stakes as he witnesses this kind of war and then says, we need to go back to war stuff again. But that had nothing to do with the motivation for them being there in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm referencing this not because I necessarily think the Tom Cruise film The Last Samurai is a historical documentary, but just as a touchstone, because I think most people have seen that movie. This movie, you know, was set in 1844, and The Last Samurai was set in 1876.
Mm-hmm.
And so the time, like in terms of the time frame, we're a couple of decades basically away from the, you know, the sort of full transition of the Japanese government away from this samurai system.
Yeah.
Although it's not like everything was sunshine and roses for the Japanese government after that point.
No,
so
definitely not.
Yes, it's I don't know. It's interesting. I've always been very interested in Japanese history, and it's funny because like I've actually read a lot about it. I actually know a lot about it, and still don't feel at all qualified to talk about it. It's one of those things. I think it's a Dunning-Kruger thing where
Sure.
like you learn enough to realize that like, oh, I've only read 8 books on this, which is really nothing in the grand scheme of things. So
Sure.
I shouldn't talk about it. But I mean, it's just kind of a very fascinating example of humanity, I guess.
Yeah.
That you can see a lot of lessons about humanity in
Definitely.
in these stories.
Definitely. Man, I like I like The Last Samurai a lot too. I really enjoyed that movie.
Yeah.
He's fucking. I actually worry about myself, like how meaningful and impactful and moving the sacrificial play is to me in storytelling form. You know, like that gets to me, and we were just talking about why biologically that would be so, but like I don't necessarily think that's a good thing. I mean, that's certainly like governments have used that innate like human quality to their advantage to force people to go charging forward across a field and die like over and over again throughout history. I don't know if that's a good if it's good that I just am so attracted to that kind of story.
I don't quite know how to think about it. I do feel like at some point in the last several years, I don't think I can say I grew out of it, because that's just a lie, but I kind of began to see it for more what it is. But I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I don't know what to do about that. I don't know if I should. I don't know if that's bad. I don't know if that's good. Like, I don't see how it could be strictly bad to have an impulse to protect your loved ones.
Yeah.
it's I think it has its place. And I agree with you though. Like I'm very susceptible to it. Like there's all these moments in stories like Lord of the Rings where it's like when you think about it, like when you think about what is powerful about this moment, it is actually touching upon self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
And I mean many of the best moments of Lord of the Rings are somehow related to self-sacrifice,
Sure.
willingness to self-sacrifice, or in some cases actually self-sacrificing. And yeah, I don't know. I don't have a deep philosophical answer here. I guess I like that this movie. I guess I like the reason we're having this conversation in this movie, like while talking about this movie, is that normally I would just sort of like have those emotions and pump my fist and be like, yeah, they won. This is the movie that forced me to ask the question: is this good?
Absolutely.
So I'm really. I don't know. It really counts for something with me. And this is one of those movies that I think it did kind of stick around in my head for a few days after I watched it.
And I think to kind of steer this conversation away from the philosophical and back to, hey, we're reviewing a movie. I think it's one of those type of movies that births those conversations for sure. Like, and it elevates what the movie is doing to me, at least, because I want movies to make me think about these things. And I want movies I think movies can be fun action. Like, it's really cool seeing these incredibly badass warriors just defeat hundreds of bad guys while also in the back of your head going, I don't know. I even kind of liked that the movie like had a built-in reason for why like all these nameless soldiers sucked so much. It's because it's peacetime and nobody knows how to fight anymore,
right? Except
for these like diehard, like refuse to give up on the old way samurai.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I may be off base here, but just by the fact that almost all of those foot soldier guys had katanas makes me suspect that they were supposed to all be samurai. They were just
they were
just not practicing.
Yeah, I think they were all supposed to be samurai. Yeah. Because I think that's part of what the bandit guy is like. Like, there's way too many fucking samurai here. Yeah. Whenever a bunch of samurai get together, it's a bad time.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And let me tell you, the most genius production design choice in this entire movie was making the bad guys wear hats. Thank you, Takashi Miike, for making the bad guys wear hats. I always knew where the good guys versus the bad guys were, even as the battle got super hectic and people are sprinting across the screen, and it was just good decision. Yeah. I wonder if there was an early meeting that was like, these guys got to wear hats. You know, people are going to get confused.
Even more so than just being hats, they're hats that kind of obscure their face.
Yes,
which actually helps like your eyes to kind of instantly find the faces of the people who you're supposed to be paying attention to.
Yes.
Instead of getting snagged on the faces of the bad guys who don't really matter. Yeah, I agree. That was great. That was a good decision. You know, like in terms of just like the literally only other nitpick I have about the film is like in the sword fights and like the massive sword fight scenes, you'll have like 10 people surrounding one of our heroes, and the camera has to do that thing where it's like very tight in on the hero and kind of rotating around him, and he's like blocking the frame almost, because basically the camera has to hide the fact that any of the 3 or 4 dudes who's behind the hero could just stab him in the back, but they aren't. And like they do the thing where the hero is kind of like turning and like swinging his sword all around him, but it's like, okay, look, like if somebody's just turning and swinging the sword around, somebody's gonna be able to stab him in the back. That's just gonna happen. But like the movie successfully keeps you from really being distracted by that too much. But I was just kind of aware of that a couple of times.
I don't know, man. If I'm like trying to fight a guy and he's killed like 30 people, and then he's just swinging his sword widely in an arc in front of me or near the side of me, I'm probably not going to be the one of the group that said, I'm going to try to time this where I get to swoop in, and when he's swinging it the other way, I'm going to swoop in and stab him. That's not going to be me. Yeah. I'm not going to be that guy.
Right. Perhaps you'd be thinking Doyleistically, like, well, if I try that, then he's going to notice and immediately turn and stab me in the face.
Yeah. I don't know how true this is to actual like sword fighting techniques or anything. No idea. Don't have any experience in this. But I would see that like when you're that outnumbered, just fanning your blade out quickly in an arc would be like the most effective way to just keep people the fuck away from you.
Yeah.
But I agree. There are definitely moments where their characters just standing behind them. And it doesn't have the they come fight them one at a time problem as much as a lot of other action films do when it's 1 versus 100.
Yes.
But there are definitely some moments where, yeah, you can tell that there are people just, why wouldn't they stab him right in the back?
Exactly. I mean, it's not nearly as egregious as some things like you just said, but like my, very, very meager experience with sword fighting, which I have more than zero, is that like the way they like the whole basis of that art is like if you give them the slightest opening, they immediately have already cut your head off. So, but I guess we're just meant to believe that all of these evil samurai are just really shitty. So,
yeah, they're just really, really bad at this whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, they have guns and they can't even get those to fire in time to take out the arrow people. Like none of the assassins are taken out. They're just standing on top of roofs shooting arrows, and no one hits any of them ever.
It's it's pretty funny.
It's amazing.
And then they leave the rooftops without having expended all their arrows, which bothered both of us as well.
My one strategic complaint would be maybe stick to the rooftops a little bit more. Like I love the explosions they had, and I loved like the closing walls made of trees, which I mean, we didn't talk about that, but it's kind of hilarious that their strategy was we're just going to go to this town and we're just going to buy it. We're going to buy the town and make everyone leave. And then we're just going to fucking destroy the entire town.
Yeah.
That's our plan.
That's great. No, it's funny because at that point in the movie, when they were saying like buyout was their plan, I was like, what? That must be some like term that I don't understand. And then, no, it was just like, no, they just wanted to buy out the whole town.
We just bought the whole town and then just blew it the fuck up. Yeah. Great stuff.
Yep.
I really enjoyed it overall. I thought this was great fun and also deep and introspective. I'm curious about the 1963 original. I kind of want to go watch that now. It really made me want to go revisit Seven Samurai and Yojimbo a little bit more. It made me want to go watch some more Japanese samurai films. And like I got all these books I have to read. I really want to read Musashi. I really want to read Shogun. I've not read any of the Shogun books either.
Yeah, I read all of the James Clavell novels, which are really, they're all good, and I think they're not like, well, none of these books are really historically accurate. They're not trying to be. They're syncretisms of like different things that were happening at about that time with different names and stuff. But I think they try to capture like the main ideas. All the James Clavell novels, obviously written by an American, or maybe he's English. I don't remember.
I believe he's English.
And then Musashi was actually written by a Japanese man. So that I feel like that's maybe a somewhat more authentic source of like the ideas here. But they're all great. They're all great.
I wonder, like, in 2021 what people think of Shogun, it feels like that, because that was the 70s, and it feels like we are much more tolerant of here's a British guy writing about Japan. And I wonder, I don't know. I just remember like those books just had a very enticing cover to me. Like it's the red Shogun. Like it was just on my dad's bookshelf, and I was just fascinated by them as a kid, and I always meant to read them, and I just never did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Tana French was born in Vermont, so people can write about other cultures.
I'm sorry. What? What?
I mean, she's not, she lived in Dublin. She wasn't born there. That's all I'm saying.
You've destroyed my entire life. This is wild.
I mean, for all I know, she was born in Vermont and then lived most of her life in Ireland. I'm just saying, Scott.
She's an American writing about the Irish culture. Canceled. I'm done with her. No. I think I'll prioritize Musashi, but I really want to read more stories in this time period and this it's fascinating to me. I love it.
Me too.
All right, so that was 13 Assassins. Thank you so much to our patron Strifey for having us take a look at that. I'm so glad we got to watch that. I probably would not have done so otherwise. So it's always fun when a patron makes us look at something and we just love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I would have watched this movie otherwise. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. Doof. All right, Matt. We got to talk about the Oscars.
Do we?
Very briefly.
Okay.
I want to just use this as a jumping off point because you watched Nomadland, which was the Best Picture winner, and I wanted to kind of briefly talk to you about your experience with that movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
But before that, I just wanted to talk about what happened on Sunday night because it was crazy.
Tell us, because I didn't watch it because I'm one of the everyone who didn't watch it.
So just numbers wise, 9.5 million people watched the Academy Awards on Sunday night. That's the lowest amount by a whole lot. The previous lowest amount of viewers was 23 million last year. So that's a drop of like 58% over 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
It's abysmal. Nobody watched this thing. And an interesting thing is it kind of felt like they knew that. And so they were trying to make a show for the people that they knew were going to watch. You know, it's like perhaps the first time they were not trying to make a show for the everyday viewer who hasn't watched any of these movies, which is an interesting choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like normally during the acting awards, they'll play a clip from the scene in which the actor is being nominated. And you'll get to see like, oh, wow, that was really good. Like, and so if you're watching the Academy Awards and you haven't seen Nomadland, wow, look at that Frances McDormand performance. That was amazing. I want to go see that movie now. They didn't do that this year. Instead of doing that, they just had the presenter talk about each of the actors' performances. Which
that's terrible.
I get the sentiment behind it, but you got to show the clips, man. You just got to you got to show the clips.
Yeah. I mean, that just makes me even more glad I didn't watch it because for me, that's like the main fun part about the Academy Awards is like watching these clips of powerful stuff and then maybe like cutting to show like the creators of it. Yeah. It's like, I don't know, that's kind of neat, right? That's a neat thing. Yeah. I don't really ever care for like the cringe humor of the host or.
Well, they don't do hosts anymore. There's no hosts.
Yeah. I mean, I can totally see why. There needs to be
a host. There needs to be a fucking host, Academy. Come on. You need a host again. You don't have to have the host do a monologue at the beginning, but you need a host. You need someone to wrangle this thing.
I feel like, I mean, when I was, a teenager, the Oscars were like good, actually. Like not just like it's a spectacle so everyone watches it. It would be like, oh, this is fun. Like they would have a fun like intro thing. I don't remember who it was exactly, but there was one year where it was like they had done a really elaborate like piece of, filmmaking where it was like the host was like running between scenes of the movies that were going to be contenders that year.
Yeah. So there was a Hugh Jackman year where he made cardboard. He didn't make, but the story of the thing is that he made cardboard versions of each of the movie and was like sprinting between the cardboard versions of them while singing a number. And it was incredible. And it actually won an Emmy because it was so good.
Uh-huh.
And that wasn't that long ago. But yeah, I mean, Billy Crystal used to host all the time, and he's like one of the greatest performers of all time. He's great. And like, I don't know, like on the one hand, this thing was directed by Steven Soderbergh, and he did a lot of really interesting things. So the intro was Regina King walking into Union Station in Los Angeles, and the camera's like following her while credits are playing. It's the most Steven Soderbergh thing you can think of. It basically looked like Ocean's 11. And the way they filmed the Oscars, they were going for a 24 frames per second look. They were trying to make it look more movie-ish. It was much more intimate because it was much smaller. And all those things I really liked. And then there were choices like not showing clips. And there were choices like they went through the in memoriam like hyper fast for some reason. Like you couldn't even read the names of the people before they were moving on to the next one because they like matched it with the beat of the song, and the song was moving too fast. And then of course the biggest blunders they made was Soderbergh decided he was going to rearrange when certain awards were given, which isn't a huge deal, except when it is, because the Best Director award, which is usually like the fourth to last or second to last award of the night, was given like in hour one. And you're just like, oh, that's weird. And then you're watching the show. It's got about 20 minutes left. And they go, all right, Best Picture. And you're like, wait, what? What? Best what? So Nomadland wins Best Picture. And then the narrative from this point on has to be the only two awards left are Best Actor and Best Actress. So in your head, you're thinking, okay, I think I see what they're doing. They think Chadwick Boseman's going to win. And they want to conclude the night on a very touching scene of Chadwick Boseman being posthumously awarded this Oscar. His wife probably will come up on stage and give a speech, and it will be this beautiful moment remembering a very talented actor who absolutely deserved this award. Like in your head, you can see that idea, and you can see why they did it. But the problem was, Matt, that Chadwick Boseman did not win the Academy Award.
Whoopsie.
Anthony Hopkins won the Academy Award, who was asleep in his bed in Wales because it was 4 a.m. and he's 83 years old. And he didn't think he was going to win. So then what happened was Joaquin Phoenix just said, okay, we accept on Anthony Hopkins' behalf. Good night.
I guess don't play that heartrending clip montage of Chadwick Boseman's performances that we had prepared, and just cut the feed.
It was so awkward. And I actually read today that apparently they actually had a contingency plan for this, where they were going to cut to London. They were going to have Olivia Colman kind of accept the award on Anthony Hopkins' behalf and kind of talk for a little bit. That was their plan, their contingency plan if Anthony Hopkins won. But like the person presenting the award was Joaquin Phoenix, and he was in total I don't give a shit mode. And so he just didn't do that. And because like Joaquin Phoenix walks on the stage and goes like, yeah, they wanted me to tell this story about how actors like really channel and get into the character and really channel them. It's like, but I've never done that. So he just went off script. He just went totally off script. And it was just a fucking disaster. It was just a fucking disaster.
You can't hand the ball to Joaquin when it actually matters in real time.
I love Joaquin Phoenix, one of the most talented actors of all time. You cannot trust him to do this kind of thing. He doesn't care about it. He doesn't give a shit. And it sucks because it drowned out all the amazing things that were happening, right? Like it drowned out Nomadland's Best Picture win, which was great. It drowned out Chloe Zhao being the first woman of color to ever win a directing Oscar. It drowned out the first Asian woman to win Best Supporting Actress since the 60s. Like there's all these incredible moments that happened. I mean, it drowned out Anthony Hopkins winning an Academy Award that for all intents and purposes, like I have not seen The Father yet. I need to see The Father, but everyone's saying this is the performance of his career. And when it's Anthony Hopkins and you're saying it's the performance of his career, that fucking means something.
That's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous thing to say.
Yeah. And so all these things were drowned out because they just fucked up so badly. And it's just like, I always kind of assumed that the producers knew who won. That like obviously they have an accounting firm come in and count the votes and they try to keep those envelopes sealed, but like they let like the guy in charge of directing the show in on that. So like they have maybe some like a few seconds of, okay, we're going to need to cut to Olivia Colman here because she's about to win. We need to cut to Frances because she's about to win. So we need to be ready for that cut, you know? But I guess the truth is that they don't know who's going to win, that the people producing and directing the show have no idea. And they gambled. They gambled here on a great moment, and it would have been an amazing moment, and they lost.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think you could also view it as like, they had a list of names to go from. They were like, okay, the people who give out the awards have to be like from this list. And then they like had this many people who were willing to do it or available or whatever. Yeah. And they were like, okay, you got Joaquin here. Yeah, everybody loves Joaquin.
Well, what they always do with the actor and actress awards is they have the person who won the award last year come and present it. So
okay.
Joaquin won for Joker last year, but normally what they do is they reverse the gender. So the best actor will do for the best actress and vice versa. They decided not to do that this year. And they paid for it.
Okay. I'm now unable to continue this conversation because I'd forgotten that Joaquin won Best Actor for Joker.
Yeah.
Until now.
Yeah.
And
Remember that? Remember that was just a year ago?
No, I don't remember that at all. Dear God.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was actually, watching this was really alarming because not only did Joaquin Phoenix win for the Joker last year that I had completely forgotten about, but Renee Zellweger won actress for Judy, which is a movie that nobody saw that I totally forgot happened last year too. And I was just like, oh, it's Renee Zellweger. Oh yeah, she won actress last year? Okay, sure.
Huh. Good for her.
The Oscars.
I'm learning so much. Oh my God.
So yeah, I mean, it was a mess. It was a mess. Like, there's some people out there that are like worst Oscars ever. I don't think that's the case. I don't think this blunder is as bad as reading the wrong movie name and having all those people come on stage and then halfway through them giving their thank you speeches going, oh no, we fucked up, and it's actually a different movie that won. I think that's worse than what happened here.
Oh, that was much. Yeah, no, that was definitely worse. To some degree, I think everyone was going to give them a pass for like weird, bizarre, socially distanced Oscar thing. Like, okay, you get one moderate mistake for free, actually, because everything's weird right now. Yeah, no, I would never. I mean, I didn't watch it, obviously, but this doesn't sound like the worst thing in the world. It just sounds dumb. Yeah,
but they dropped. It was like an underhand, slow pitch pass. And they dropped it. They dropped it big time, which makes it feel worse, even if it's not. It was just a bummer. Like, Elise turned to me in the middle of the night and was like, I love the Oscars. I love the Oscars. I'm bored. And I was like, uh-oh. And this is why people don't watch this thing. And I don't know, like, I don't know how to save it at this point. Like, should they be like, here's the question I have. Should they be trying to court people who don't bother to go watch the fucking movies? Like, should that be their goal, to try to court people that haven't bothered to watch any of these movies? Should the goal be to make a successful, entertaining show for those people? I don't know if it is. I don't know if that should be the goal of the award show.
I don't know. I feel like the reason I stopped watching the Oscars had more to do with the fact that it's so long. And like, I couldn't, like, especially now that I have little kids and have for some time now, it like just like putting on the Oscars and having it be on for 4 hours or whatever was just not like a realistic option. And so I just wouldn't bother. So that's me. Like, I think everybody probably has their own reasoning, but for me, it was just like so long and bloated, and then there's all then they'd spend so much time in awards that like nobody cares about, and it's like, I know everyone's contributions are important and so forth, but I can't muster up a good solid care for some of these awards. But then they removed a lot of them, didn't they?
They removed some of them. They've changed their minds about this. So they were going to move some away from the broadcast. They combined the 2 sound awards into one award this year. So there used to be sound editing and sound mixing. They combined that into just sound, which makes sense because nobody knows the difference between those two things. And if you see every Oscars prediction article from the past 20 years, always also explains what the difference between sound mixing and sound editing is, because nobody knows. So that makes sense. I don't know. Like, I don't want to see them like these already not maligned, but like I don't want the Oscars to formally say, hey, makeup, hey, production design, you don't matter.
Yeah.
Like that's shitty, because they do matter. They matter a lot. They're a very important part of the movie. But yeah, they're not the thing that people turn the TV on to watch the Oscars for. I mean, and that's the question I have, is like, should they be worried about the fact that only 9.5 million people watch this thing? I mean, on the one hand, yes, obviously, because they charge ABC $100 million a year to get to the rights to broadcast this thing. So like, there's a lot of money in this. So obviously they should be worried that many people aren't watching. But like, I don't know. I think the Academy needs to take a step back and just be like, what is our goal with this thing? What is our point? Yeah. And the show needs to be designed around that central idea.
Yeah, right. Is it a industry show for industry insiders to recognize all of them appropriately and to make a good show in the doing so? Or is it a mainstream appeal aimed at capturing the broadest possible base of the American movie-going public?
Yeah.
I mean, asterisk there, like the movie-going public has also shrunk.
Yes. Because
not only do we have a pandemic, but I think the number of people going out to the movies was already on the decline. And so I think that has a lot to do with it. Like maybe, I mean, I don't necessarily think this is the case, but it's possible that the Academy has done nothing wrong. And it's just that less people are seeing movies. And the consequence of that is that people care much less about the Oscars.
It's also the types of movies that are being nominated are different now.
Yeah.
Like Gladiator won Best Picture. Right?
Yeah. And that was a broadly appealing popular movie, right?
Right.
And now it's hard to imagine that happening again.
Yeah. I mean, Nomadland is one of the most accessible movies ever right now. Like, you just have to have a Hulu subscription. Like, half of the stuff is just, you just have to have a Netflix subscription, which like half of this fucking country does. And still people aren't seeing them.
Well, yes. I mean, maybe we should segue into talking about Nomadland.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's talk about Nomadland.
Yeah.
The Nomadland won the Best Picture award. So you dutifully sat down and said, I'm going to watch this thing.
Yes. I sat down with my parents, watched Nomadland. It's, and that's the, to contrast it with Gladiator is sort of perfect, is like Nomadland is a great, powerful piece of film. Wonderfully acted, very interesting and kind of unique in the things that it's doing in certain ways, where it's not even a normal film in the normal sense in some ways, right? It's sort of it's sort of like pseudo documentary in some aspects. Yeah. Never quite seen anything like this before, honestly. It's innovative in that way. It's got all these things going for it, but like, man, there is no film more different from Gladiator. Like it's just not trying to entertain you at all, right? Like it's trying to kick you in the nuts, actually.
Yeah, definitely. It's a beautiful film, and it's a beautifully personal film, and part of the reason why I kind of rolled my eyes at the takes about this movie that I think misunderstood it is that just it's not trying to do any of the things I thought people were saying it was trying to do. It is this intensely personal, intimate film about this woman who is just destroyed by grief and is trying to find who she is and what the meaning of her life is. And she's intensely lonely, but she's also it's interesting because she's putting herself in positions that are going to make her lonely. Yeah. She's living this incredibly lonely lifestyle and then is recognizing her loneliness and like reaching towards people only for them to move on or for her to move on because of the nomadic nature. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Right. And the people who reach out to her, she knows that she won't be happy if she stays in place. It's just her nature. It's who she is. I mean, I found a lot of it to be, just very kind of human and relatable. The whole, just the themes of loneliness, basically, like, yes, like you said, it's intensely personal, but as we often say, a good story finds the generic in the specific. So it's this highly specific tale about this woman and her grief and her loneliness and her isolation and alienation, but we can all see something of our own stories and our own lives in that, and that's what makes it powerful and resonant and impactful.
And just an absolutely incredible performance by Frances McDormand, who, I mean, she won the Oscar. I did not predict that, but happy to be wrong. This woman is just one of the best actresses of all time. Like, she's now won 3 acting Oscars for Best Actress. There's only one other person in history that's done that, Matt. It's Katharine fucking Hepburn.
Yeah.
It's like one of the most well-known actresses of all time. And she absolutely belongs in that company. And in this movie in particular, because Chloe Zhao's tendency to use non-professional actors, Frances McDormand is not just having to like bring this character to life. She's kind of having to like lead the movie in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
She's having to like force, or not force, but like hold the non-professional actors' hands and like lead them through the scene and lead them through the stories that they're telling and like coax the performance out of them. And I don't want to take anything away from Chloe Zhao, because I'm sure she was very, very involved in that as well. But like mid-scene, Frances is the one having to do it, right? And I think you can kind of see that in moments where she's having to like facilitate these performances a little bit. And
yeah,
so she's doing so many different things in this movie.
It's like she's not just acting for the camera, she's having to become that person for that scene. She's having to just be that person, and however they're going to act and however they're going to behave or react, she's going to continue to be Fern.
Mm-hmm.
and be authentically Fern as possible. And I can't possibly say enough good things about her performance in the movie. It's if I ever do rewatch the movie, which I don't know if I will, just because it's so like heavy, it will be because I want to like study the way she goes about things, because it's so incredibly excellent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's such a talented actress. It's just incredible. Congratulations to her. Nomadland, a wonderful film. Folks need to go watch this movie. Get in the mental mind space that you're gonna have a bad time. Like, it's just the type of movie it is. Not because the movie's bad, but just because it's a rough sit. It is not a movie that makes you feel good about yourself.
Yeah,
or even the world, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's a downer. It's pessimistic.
Mm-hmm.
After we finished watching it, me and my parents, we all stood up off the couch, and I said, "Oh, hold on, Dad, they missed a spot," and then I pantomimed kicking him in the nuts, because it's like, it's not okay. Now it's finished, right? But I mean, we all enjoyed it. They knew what I meant, though.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Of course. So that's Nomadland, available now on Hulu. If you log into Hulu right now, you will see it right away, because one thing the streaming services did like 10 minutes after the Oscars was over is that like the top row of selections is all their Academy Award winning stuff. It's just right there. And it just goes to show you like how many of these things was through a streaming service. Like that was the story of 2020, is that like every single one of these things, like Nomadland won big. That's a Hulu film. Netflix had a bunch. I think Netflix led the way with nominations this year. And that's a shift.
That's huge. Yeah. I mean, man, that is a big deal, actually. Wow. I didn't know that before this. Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's because they relaxed the requirements. So the Academy requirements have for a long time been, this movie has to play in a movie theater for a certain amount of time for it to be eligible for an Oscar. And they couldn't do that this year. So Netflix could submit everything that they released. Now, normally in a normal year, Netflix will like do a limited run for some of their movies. Like they'll just set up like a week-long engagement in like LA and New York, which is like the bare minimum for meeting Oscar qualifications. But they didn't have to do that this year, and they didn't have to do that with any of their movies this year. So they just got to go crazy. And they didn't. I don't think Netflix did very well. Like their big movie was Trial of Chicago 7, which got a big fat 0 awards. Mm-hmm. So they didn't like win the day, but just the fact that they were just a dominating presence.
Yeah, it's a bunch of free advertising, if nothing else.
Sure, absolutely.
Cool.
All right, well, that is the Oscars, and that is Nomadland. Until next year, it's gonna be wild, Matt. I don't know what the Oscars are gonna look like next year, but it's gonna be very, very different, I think.
Yeah, we're in a rapidly changing world right now. So, yeah.
All right, we've been going on for a while, so why don't we just wrap up here, and maybe we can talk about Falcon and the Winter Soldier a little bit next week sometime.
Sounds good to me.
Maybe give you some time to actually watch the episode.
Yeah,
if you want to.
That's the thing. I haven't watched the finale, and I would feel like I was kind of talking out of my ass if I if I didn't watch the finale, but still tried to have opinions. So
Sure. All right. Well, then that is all we have for you folks this week. If you have any opinions on 13 Assassins, on Takashi Miike, and any of his films, or on the 2020 Oscars and Nomadland, please let us know. You can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on our Twitter account at doofmedia. As always, you can find our subreddit account that is r/doofmedia, where you can talk about this week's episode or any of our episodes or anything else you want to talk about. Start a thread, let us know, and we'll come chat with you.
Yeah, tell us what you thought about Nomadland, for that matter.
Yeah. Absolutely.
If you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to subscribe and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
Yes, you can find this and all of our shows over at our website, doofmedia.com. That's where you can find our book club, Matt. I say this because it's this week. Every month we meet on the last Friday of the month to discuss a book. This month we're going to be meeting this Friday, which I think, looking into the future, when this episode is out, will be today. So today, if you're listening to this when it came out, the 30th, right? Yes, the 30th of April at 9:30 p.m. Central Time, we'll be meeting on our YouTube channel to chat about the Peter Straub book, Ghost Story. So if you've read that book or just want to listen to a couple people talk about it for a while and interact with us, you can check that out. I love book club. You guys should participate. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it may be my favorite thing that we do around here.
Yeah.
So yes, please join the live stream if you've read the book, or maybe if you haven't and don't care about being spoiled on a really good book.
Yeah. And of course, if you want to support us, you can do so on our Patreon account. You can head to patreon.com/doofmedia and donate at any of our levels. This episode here is only possible thanks to the incredibly generous contribution of Patron Strifey. I think it's Strifey.
I'm going to say Strifey. Correct us if we're wrong.
Yes, please correct us. And thank you so much. It was a great pick, great movie. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Also, please consider rating and reviewing the Doofcast on Apple Podcasts, because each review really does help get more people to see the podcast, and then they can listen to it and enjoy it, and then that will be good
have their
for them.
lives changed.
Have their lives
forever.
Changed. Yeah,
forever.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, folks, that is it for this week. We will be back next week as our Deconstructing Verbinski series continues with his second film, The Mexican, which is about a gun, I think. It's been a long time since I've seen it.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.